So, in the last Olympian, Percy and Nico have to get back into the underworld in order for Percy to bathe in the Styx and bear the curse of Achilles. But the entire first book was devoted to Percy finding the entrance to the underworld in Los Angeles. He took 10 days to get from New York to LA in order to get to the realm of Hades. And rather than rehashing this entire journey for the first half of the last Olympian, it's revealed that the door of Orpheus has been hiding in plain sight this whole time. In Central Park, there is another secondary passage that can get demigods into the underworld by using the same path that Orpheus once took. This is how Percy and Nico get down there again, and in The Sun and the Star, that doorway shows up again when Nico and Will have to get down into the underworld so they can rescue Bob from Tartarus. So, today, we wanted to talk about the original story of this door and dive into the tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice. Quick disclaimer before we start, these myths usually have a little bit of variation depending on the account that you dive into. So, even though the main story beats are the same, some of the details in between are a little more unclear. Because of this, we're going to do our best to try to talk about a few different accounts in order to create one cohesive story. So, with that out of the way, let's dive in. Orpheus was the son of one of the 9 muses, and because of this, he was a fantastic musician who was far beyond what any regular mortal musician could achieve. Exactly which of the 9 muses he's the son of varies a little bit between retellings of the story, but the general consensus seems to be that he was the son of Calliope, the eldest of the muses who presided over music, harmony, poetry, and eloquence. Since there are so many retellings of these myths, his father is not set in stone, but in most versions of the story, the identity of his father is either Oeagrus, the king of Thrace, or Apollo himself. In the Percy Jackson universe, it's probably more likely that he was the son of Oeagrus, for one simple reason that we're going to get into in just a moment when we get to Eurydice. But regardless of whether or not he was related to Apollo, we do know that he was trained by Apollo. Between his godly training and his celestial heritage, Orpheus quickly became one of the single greatest musicians in all of Greece, and his music even ascended to being regarded as magic. Legend tells that Apollo gifted Orpheus a lyre which contained the wildest beasts of the forest and caused the trees themselves to weep. For a period of time, Orpheus was an Argonaut. His music was so powerful that it could outperform the song of the sirens, and he was able to save his crew from the siren call by overpowering them with his own music. As a brief reminder, the sirens are singers in the sea who lure unwitting sailors to their deaths by singing of their heart's desire. Their voices are so alluring that sailors will jump into the ocean just to be reunited with whatever it is that they want most. And Orpheus's music was powerful enough to outweigh the enchantment of the sirens. He mastered the art of musical enchantment, and eventually he married his beloved Eurydice. The reason why it's not likely that he's the son of Apollo in the Percy Jackson universe is because Eurydice is a daughter of Apollo, and Percy says that 2 children of the same god dating is gross and unacceptable. But 2 demigods that come from different godly parents are a-okay to date. Normally, Greek myths aren't shy about this kind of thing, but given Percy Jackson's more tame nature, this is probably what's going on more likely than not. Back to the story at hand, however, is where we get to the door of Orpheus, which he figured out how to open after Eurydice was bitten by a venomous snake and subsequently died. He was so distraught and heartbroken that he became determined to break into the underworld in order to get her out, and his music was able to open a catacomb which could lead him into the realm of Hades. He used his music to charm his way past Charon the Ferryman, Cerberus, and the Furies, and eventually he got all the way to Hades himself. He begged for the king of the dead to release his wife. He claimed that she was gone too soon and that she had so much left of her life to live and deserved to complete her time on Earth. Hades, however, is a strict ruler, and he understands that the rules must be followed. If he started making exceptions, then he would have to flood the world with spirits of the dead just because mortals were brazen enough to ask. He was determined that Persephone was endeared by his act, and Orpheus was lucky enough that he ventured into the underworld during wintertime. You see, Persephone only spends half of her time in the underworld, which is the half of the year that spring and summer seem to disappear in her absence. But that's a topic for a different day. She encouraged Hades to be lenient, and to give the young man a chance, so Hades offered him a deal. He said that he would allow Eurydice to return with him, but he had to follow a very strict set of rules. Orpheus was to lead her up to the surface world, but he could not speak to her, nor could he turn back and look at her. He just had to trust that she was following him, and when they reached the surface, they could be together again. So Orpheus took the deal. He started his trek back up to the surface world, but he had no indication that Eurydice was behind him. Slowly, his own self-doubt and apprehension began to nag at him. And Hades tricked him? Why would he agree to such a deal? Did Hades say that just to get Orpheus to go away without ever having any actual intention of allowing Eurydice to follow him? All of these questions burned away at him. Some versions of the myth say he simply couldn't resist looking at her eternal beauty after spending so much time without her, but in every iteration of the story, the pressure eventually got to him. Whether he couldn't fathom the idea of going another minute without looking at her, or simply became too doubtful that she was really there, he turned back. He broke Hades' rule only to find that Hades had actually kept his word. Eurydice was following him up the stairs, but he couldn't restrain himself. and Eurydice vanished into a wisp. The most common follow-up to this story is that he was cast into a severe depression, and he shunned any other romantic interest from any women in Greece. In some accounts, he even turns to men, but regardless of the version, he swore he would never love another woman again. And this made its way into the Maids of Dionysus. The Maids wanted Orpheus, but he was committed to playing beautiful, mournful songs in honor of Eurydice, and the Maids got incredibly jealous and enraged at the disrespect. They began to hurl rocks at him, and in their envy they killed Orpheus. His lyre floated through the seas until it was recovered by Apollo himself, and in honor of his old friend, he sent the instrument into the sky and cast its image into the stars. According to the Greeks, this is where we get the constellation Lyra, as a tribute to Orpheus and his love for Eurydice. In the Percy-Jackson universe, we know that the door of Orpheus became such an important landmark in the mythos that it moved with the balance of power as it shifted over the United States. We know that the gods move with the center of power, which is why Olympus, the underworld, the Sea of Monsters, and so much more are located in modern-day USA. This just goes to show you how influential the story was. So that's the story of Orpheus, his door, and his love of Eurydice. We'd love to hear your thoughts down below, so please engage in the conversation. We love this series. We love talking about this series. Thank you, and have a good one.